What was it like to be in the first response unit to arrive at the Pentagon immediately after the terrorist attacks of 9/11? Well, my guest today is going to talk about that. He's also going to talk about serving in Iraq. He's going to talk about how he founded a fitness company called Soldierfit. He's fought in MMA competitions, but it's not the kind of episode that you may think after that introduction. My guest today is Danny Farrar, and he is the CEO of Soldierfit. And I'll tell you that I've known this guy for quite some time, but today is the most real and authentic conversation I've ever had with him. He opens up and just unabashedly shares some raw things and is just, I think, about as real as a person can get, which honestly made me start to share and get pretty real on this show as well. It's for sure the most authentic conversation I've ever had on the ThriveMore show because of how open Danny is. And I just enjoyed the heck out of it. I will tell you there's a little adult language because we were just having an authentic exchange. So pardon the language, but enjoy the content because we talk about fatherhood. We talk about being married, what it's like to get divorced. We talk about the importance of living up to your values. We talk about entrepreneurship. We cover the whole gamut. It is a great interview, and I'm so grateful that Danny came on today. Enjoy. He has lived the highs and the lows common to many veterans following their tours of duty, and he founded Platoon 22 in 2014 to help stem the tragic lows that have overwhelmed too many of our military heroes. The nonprofit organization works to reduce incidents of veteran suicides by employing them and our nation's first responders through a variety of programs and services. We'll talk to Danny and find out his story in the Army as an infantryman, easy for me to say, shortly after graduating high school. But also there's a connection to mixed martial arts and then into a company that is called Soldierfit, which is a growing concept in the Midwest, a group fitness concept. And as its CEO, he has expanded the workout facility and the franchise from what it started at to being a thriving business today. So let's jump right into this. I know I'm gonna admit to my listeners, I know Danny from attending several similar conferences, some sales conferences and fitness centered conferences. So Danny is a guy, and I see him bring a big chunk of his team to these conferences. So he's a guy that plays all in. He brings and finances a lot of his team to go to these events so that they can be better prepared and better serve their clients. And I would just call the guy about as authentic as they get. So with that, no further ado, Danny, welcome to the ThriveMore podcast.
Thank you for that introduction, man. It was super nice of you. I appreciate it, especially coming from somebody like you.
Oh my gosh, no, when we booked you on here, I was really, really stoked because again, I've watched you present at conferences, and you and I have talked on the side, and I just find you to be an incredibly genuine and authentic guy that says it how it is, but always finds a way to win. Like I just watch you, and you always find a way to win. So let's do this because the listeners don't know you as well as I know you. Kind of talk about, take us back to your youth, because, you went pretty soon out of high school into the infantry. And I would love to know your thoughts and your feelings of why the Army, why the military. Like, you made a decision. There was a pivotal moment at some point. You made that decision. I'd love to hear about that.
Well, to get to the decision, you got to go all the way back to the beginning. A lot of people that go into the military, and there's just truth around this. We don't come, stereotypically speaking, I'm painting with a broad brush. I'm sure there are some multimillionaires whose kids went into the military in a quest to be the next Batman. But for the most part, the people that go into the military do come from that middle class to lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum. They're coming from inner cities. They're coming from rural towns. And in so many ways, a lot of people that are running to the military are running away from something. And for me, that's the case. I was adopted when I was 2 years old. I was molested by my brother and sister growing up. And so for me, it manifested itself into, I ate my face off, ballooned up to almost 300 pounds, did really, really poorly in school. I barely graduated. I graduated 146 out of 147 and spent most of my life thinking that I was stupid. And so when you're not really athletic and you're not by grades, look wise, you're not really smart. I mean, colleges aren't an option for you. And my mother she had had her third bout with cancer right before I went in the military. Family had lost everything, and so there was no way for me to afford to go to school. The true story is, I literally said this sentence. I said I would never join the army, I would never join the infantry, and I would never jump out of airplanes. And damned if I didn't do all three. And so, my first thing is, you never know what you're going to be when you grow up, when you're little. And so I went into the military. I spent 8 years in there, and the truth is, I really didn't have any other option. I'm not mechanically inclined. The only two jobs that were worth anything where I'm from is either you got on with the railroad or you got on with the power company. That's what everybody was looking to do. And truth is, neither one of those careers excited me. And so I talked to Staff Sergeant Fessman Pulatasi and signed right on up and spent 8 years as an infantry paratrooper.
Wow. So if we go back just a half a step, in high school, it sounds like you used food as a comfort tool, and you said you blew, which is amazing, because if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see Danny's like incredibly jacked. If you're listening to it on Spotify or Apple, trust me, the dude shredded. So I never would have thought that. Like, I had no idea. So you're in high school and you're at that weight. What was it like to deal with that? At that being that size in high school.
I mean, at the end of the day, I think this is why I have a level of empathy that most people don't have with our clients, is that if you've ever been overweight, I don't care how great a shape you get, you always see the fat kid in the mirror. It's like a whole separate conversation that we have to have with people that have been overweight. I'm not going to go as far as saying you have PTSD from it, but for people that are overweight, even when they lose it, it's still hard on them. It's still hard on them. As a matter of fact, side note a little bit, like one of my employees, just phenomenal transformation. I mean, arguably the best transformation I've ever seen. And I do not mean this rudely at all, but she just blossomed into a beautiful woman. I mean, just stunning. Like, people have an it factor to them.
Sure.
Right. Like I told her, like, she has an it factor. And we were having this conversation around December timeframe. And she said something to me. She goes, "I'm going on my first date." And I thought she was joking.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, she's in her 24s. Just extremely smart, graduating with this awesome degree in basically anti-terrorism, just an awesome young lady. And I was like, what, stop, it's not your first date. Like, she's 24. And she looked at me, and it broke my heart.
Yeah.
Because she looked at me and she just kind of she kind of tucked her head and she's like, "Come on, you saw how I look." Right. And so you're sitting down there and you have these conversations with these people that have just, they've transformed and they don't see it.
Yeah.
And so it's like the catch-22 when you're helping people take control of their life and get healthy. I was the same way. You still see the fat kid in the mirror. And so for me, it was a combination of eating my emotions, and I was from down south. So we fried everything. Like when I was growing up, we had that can of Crisco lard that you just poured the bacon grease back in, and you put it in the fridge, and that's how you cook the next morning.
Yep.
People don't know that anymore.
Yeah. You said something right there that just I believe so much in, is the words that we say after the two words "I am" creates your identity. And when you say "I am," and you and I both counseled so many people that are trying to lose weight. When they say, "Well, I've just always been a heavy guy, or I've always been a heavy woman, I've always struggled with my weight." Well, guess what? You'll always struggle with your weight, because that's your identity. That's your identity. You've got to be, you got to break out of that shell. And I'm a healthy, fit person who just went off the rails 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever it was, but they got to see themselves as that person who's winning at life. And that's the battle. It's not the working out. The working out is really just the monotonous stuff you got to do to get it done. But it's the mindset. I love that.
What's so funny that you said that, how similar we are, though geographically we're so far apart. I don't even know if you know this, but on the front, so because we're Soldierfit, we issue them a uniform. And so they have to wear a shirt to class that we issue them. And on the front of that shirt is dog tags. And on those dog tags is I am. Because everything you say after I am, you are. And so when we fall in, it's troops, you are, we are, I am Soldierfit. And so it's crazy, right?
I had no idea. That's so cool.
Yep. Yeah.
I should get royalties on that or something, right?
Probably.
Just kidding.
This segment is sponsored by Rockbox Fitness Franchising. Take control of your destiny and join the boutique fitness revolution with Rockbox Fitness. If you're ready to make a real impact in your community and own your own business that empowers people to achieve their best life, then Rockbox is the opportunity you've been looking for. They provide comprehensive support from site selection, upfit, training, and turnkey marketing, so you can open your studio with confidence and a strong recurring revenue member base. Visit rockboxfitness.com and click on franchise opportunities to learn more about this exciting venture in the fast-growing boutique fitness industry. It's time to turn your passion for fitness and for business into a thriving venture.
So you're in the military, and my notes here say that your unit was the first to the Pentagon during 9/11. I can't even imagine what that day was like. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so we were I was stationed with the Old Guard, which is stationed in Washington, D.C. And most people know the Old Guard. We're the ones that are doing the burials in Arlington National Cemetery. So I did the 8-man casket team. I gave commands for the firing party. And then I was also on the United States Army drill team. And so we were stating that they were getting ready for what's called a cordon. It's where, a foreign dignitary is coming in and you just go stand out there like a toy soldier. And I say toy soldier because that's one of the jokes that we always kind of said about ourselves. Like, you go out, you're in your service dress uniforms, you got a weapon that doesn't work. And all of a sudden I was upstairs in the off post room because I lived off post. And so we had our own room where we got dressed. And one of my soldiers comes upstairs and he goes, "Hey, Sergeant, a plane just hit the World Trade Center." And I'm sitting up there getting dressed. I'm like, what type of idiot flies into one of the world's tallest buildings? And I don't think anything of it. I'm thinking it's like a prop plane or something.
Yeah.
And so we go downstairs and we were at the CQ area, which is basically just the front desk in the barracks. And we're all standing there. It's probably about 30, 40 of us. We're waiting for the bus to come pick us up and drive us into the boneyard. And we watched the second plane hit. And instantaneously, everybody in the room knows this is an attack.
Yeah.
And, you're sitting there like, I want to be involved, but that's in New York. We're in D.C. And then somebody comes in and goes, the Pentagon just got hit.
Oh, my gosh.
And we happen to be the Ready Company. What a lot of people don't know about the Old Guard is that their primary mission isn't the funerals in the boneyard. It's actually protection of the Capitol. And so because we were the Ready unit, like, we literally went from being toy soldiers to changing into, back then it was BDUs, battle dress uniform, going and grabbing weapons from the arms room and ammunition and responding on American soil.
Wow.
And one of the things that sticks out to me, we talk about what are the leadership lessons that you can take from that, was just how confusing official comms were. Because people, even over official comms, they're like, the White House just got hit. There's car bombs going off downtown in DC. And, we loaded up into the LMTVs and we drove there. And as we drove around, you could smell it before you could see it. And then when we came around the side that was hit, I've always explained it to people. It was like looking at a dollhouse. So if you look at the dollhouse and you can see that backside where it's sheared off, and everything's on the floors. Like you can see the second floor, the third floor, fourth floor. I think it was like the third floor. You could see the desk, you could see the computer, you could see everything where the wall had sheared down. And so we got there, and our primary mission was first to secure it. So we secured it. And then within probably 2 days, they came out, maybe not even that long. They came out and said, hey, we're looking for a volunteer. And typically in the military, there's a running joke, Navy, never again volunteer yourself. But, we were under it as far as it was, we were at war. And so at that point in time, that's what you signed up for. So I said, hey, me and my guys will go do it. And they said, all right, well, you're going to go in and start helping remove remains. And, so we went into the Pentagon. What I always explain to people is like, it was a sunny day. It was extremely hot. And we went in, we didn't have any protective gear. We literally went in with, like rubber boots and the COVID mask that everybody was wearing. Yeah. And you walk in, it was bright, it was sunny, it was hot. But as soon as you walked in, it went pitch black. And you're walking through probably about, ankle deep water at places where the fire department had been throwing water in there to put it out. And it was that foam water because of the jet fuel and all that other stuff. And so we came around through this opening, and then you hang a left, and it was just where everything had fallen down and had sheared. And there's rubble everywhere. I won't get too graphic, but, there's pieces of people everywhere. And you looked around. If you ever watched NCI, that's what it was like. The FBI was in there. They had just like a crime scene. They had placards all over the place. And they rolled this gentleman over, and they pulled his wallet out and his ID, and they said his name was Donald Simmons. I'll remember his name till I die. And they said, hey, checked him out, annotated who he was, and then they told us we could remove him. And he was a large guy. He was probably about 6'1", 6'2", I'm assuming. And we put him over on the gurney, and we've got to carry him out through all this rubble on like that old MASH gurney. If you ever watched any of those shows. And we're slipping and falling, and he keeps rolling over on me. And one of the times he rolls over on me, I look down, I see he's got a wedding band on. And I knew in that moment there was somebody sitting at home praying that I wasn't carrying that sled. That pissed me off, and that's what ultimately prompted me to volunteer to go to Iraq.
And I don't even know how to respond to that, Danny. Wow, I think 9/11 is, it's 23 years ago now, and people, COVID kind of stole all the headlines and got everybody's, that's all people talk about anymore. But the one thing I remember about 9/11, other than the horror and the evil, but what I remember in this country is that we immediately dropped all the BS, and you just watched how neighbors talk to each other and people of different walks of life, because there was this external threat. And, for the first time in any of our lives, really, unless you were much, much, much older, if you were in your 80s or 90s, maybe, but anybody that's around, I'm 53 now, 54, like that's the first, it was all Cold War stuff. And then holy shit, we're actually at war here. This is real. And you just telling that story, like just, wow, flooded me and brought it all back. So this happens to you, you get really mad, and you volunteer to go to Iraq. So what does that look like?
Yeah. So we had I'd actually had a lot of guys. There was time between that, probably about 4 or 5 years actually. And cause I went to Iraq in 2005. And so I'd had guys that, who were my guys that, were privates at the time, and they had went on deployed, and a lot of the guys that I knew had deployed. And so it was a lot of shame or guilt about not deploying. And so there came an opportunity where they needed to do an individual augmentee. They needed one person to replace somebody. And so I threw my hand up, said, hey man, I got nothing going on. I didn't have any family or anything like that at all. I was like, send me. And so, I volunteered, and then 2 weeks later, I was standing in the middle of intersection in Baghdad with a weapon I had never shot in my life. I don't even know if the weapon was zeroed. You know, one of the things that I think is a giant misconception for people is that the military is this well-oiled, everything happens like it's supposed to happen machine. And it's just the farthest thing from the truth. Like it doesn't happen, you know? So literally, like, I flew over, got on the ground, was on the ground for 12 hours. They said, here's a weapon. Jump in a car. Never trained with anybody, never did anything with anybody. And we go to this bank in Baghdad, middle of downtown Baghdad. And they're like, all right, pull security on the street. And you just go stand out in the middle of an intersection. I mean, people don't realize how big Baghdad is. It's like the size of DC.
Yeah.
And you just stand in the middle of this intersection and nobody's wearing a uniform anyway. Right. Even the military and the police, they don't have a uniform. Like, they got whatever they could find. Some people are in desert camo. Some people are wearing BDUs, like woodland camo. Some people have flip flops. Some people have boots. Like, it's just hodgepodge. And so if their military doesn't have a uniform, well, you know for a fact the enemy doesn't have a uniform. Yeah. And so you're just literally standing there waiting, like, man, I wonder who is aiming at me right now. And so it's a different thing. But, you know, one of the things that's crazy about it, though, is, you know, years later, I come back and I've become a firefighter, and I'm sitting at the table one night with my captain while I was a rookie. And he was in Vietnam. And we're sitting there talking about it. And he's telling me about the first time he's ambushed. And I'm telling him about the first time I'm ambushed. And he looks at me and he goes, I don't know how you did it. I'm like, what? He goes, I don't know how you did it. How did you just go down, riding down the road, just waiting for some trash to blow up? And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like, bro, how did you do it?
How'd you walk through the jungle waiting? Yeah.
You just walking through the jungle waiting for some stuff to blow up. And so what that showed me in that time was, man, everybody thinks everybody else. It's weird. We're on this swing, right? We think everybody has it worse on the things that we think are bad. And then we think everybody has it better on the things that are good.
Dude, that's pure gold right there. You're absolutely right.
And it's why we're miserable as shit.
Exactly. And there's the quandary that we all live in, trying to dog paddle our way out of.
Yeah.
Wow. You know what? I forgot. I just want to tell you, like, seriously, I know I said this in the intro, that you're just the most genuine and straightforward guy. Like, the fact you've said a couple of things. One, you openly shared about the molestation when you were younger. Like, you just openly shared that, talked about the shame that you had when you were 300 pounds. I just heard you 3 minutes ago say that, you know, you had this guilt and shame for not serving and going over there, even though you were serving, but not, you know, being over in the action. Like, you're just a man that has just, it seems like you've looked yourself in the mirror and come to a point where you respect and love that man in the mirror.
I mean, listen, there's a truth is, you know, it's funny you say that. 2 years ago, I probably, of all the things that I've ever done, I actually have never talked about this publicly. It's kind of funny to say it, right? 2 years ago, I hit a low point. And it's funny because, you know, I look at the things that I've done in life and sat back and saw, like, I've seen more than most people.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there's a point in time where, like, you're like, I mean, nothing else bad can happen. And, you know, I had my, 2 years ago, I got a divorce and I didn't see it coming. Didn't see it coming at all. And it came under some circumstances that were less than awesome. And I bottomed out, but I bottomed out in anger. And I hurt a lot of people. I hurt a lot of people. I mean, I ended up going to counseling for it afterwards. And, and I was just hooking up with everybody. And I ruined relationships. And it was one of the things that I don't think people talk about enough is that, Lifetime Channel has painted this image which is complete malarkey. I don't know if you can cuss on here, so I'm gonna say malarkey.
Sure. Why do you say whatever you want to say? Yeah.
And that is that men don't give a damn, and that men are dogs, and that the man is always the villain. But in my experience, not only in my own life, but in all the guys that I've known, divorce wrecks men.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, and listeners may get mad, but I can't give you scientific numbers, but I can tell you anecdotally, women bounce back from that way better than men do. And when I went through that divorce, and I did a lot of things after that divorce that I'm not proud of. And I try to explain to people that don't grasp it. It's like, you're sitting down there and in this weird way, you're trying to, because divorce emasculates you.
Yeah. Yep.
It emasculates you, especially if you've sat down and you thought to yourself, like, man, like I went to work. I didn't party. I came home. I busted my ass. I tried to be a good dad. I'm all in. Like I provided, I protected, I professed. Like what happened? Right? Where did this go wrong? And for me, it was the last in a line of everybody leaving me and abandoning me. And it crushed me. And one of the things that came out of that was one of the few times that I think God has spoke directly to me. Is I was talking to somebody and the things that I did, I slept around with a lot of people, all consensual, nothing crazy like that. But it was all consensual, right? But afterwards, a friend of mine was talking to me and he goes, listen, hurt people hurt people.
Mm-hmm.
And I never went to church by myself, ever. 43 years on this planet, never been to church by myself. Went to church by myself that Sunday and sitting in the back row. And the preacher comes out and says, hurt people, but heal people, heal people. And I shared the stuff that I share now. Like I said, I've never really talked about this, but it is the thing that literally I'm coming to terms with now. I've never cared what other people thought of me, except for when I think they're right.
Sure.
And so, I put a dent on my reputation. And, there were people that were waiting in line to have that opportunity to run with it. But I was so ashamed of myself that I retreated, for lack of better terms. Not because, again, I care what anyone else thought, but because of what I thought about myself.
Yep.
And so you say, yeah, you're looking at the mirror, and I am. I'm trying to get to that point again where I give myself the grace, for lack of better words. Right. And I was listening to a guy the other day and he's like, listen, like, not to get religious on you, philosophical or whatever you want to call it, but he's like, listen, everybody God used was messed up. Every single one of us. And I was thinking about it from a standpoint of like, if you're out there and you're listening now, man, and you're like, I've been bottomed out and I've attempted suicide. I've been locked up in the psych ward for attempting suicide. And, that was before my kids. And I look at them and like, man, if I'd been successful, they wouldn't have been here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you're sitting down there and you're listening to this and it crosses your path, and you're thinking about all the things that you messed up, the only thing I can promise you is this. Everybody that ain't admitting it has done the same or worse. And the reason you can be used after you've messed up is because if I'm scarred, if I have bruises and dents in my armor and I'm dirty, I can't relate to Captain Perfect in the corner.
Yeah.
But if I can look at somebody else that's just as grungy as me, but they picked themselves up and found a way to do good with it, I can relate to that person. And so, man, there's an old saying, your mess is your message.
Yep.
And so if you're in a bad spot now, man, you gotta keep left, right, lefting.
Yep.
You just have to endure, because all things will end, even suffering.
Yeah. Man, I'm thankful and grateful that you talked about the feeling of divorce for men. I'm divorced. I'm remarried now, but I was divorced, and mine was pretty mutual. It really was, and now it's incredibly amicable, and it's actually amazingly worked out wonderfully, and great co-parenting and all that stuff, even though the kids are grown. But even with a mutual decision to divorce, I remember so vividly feeling like a failure and emasculated.
Yeah.
And she started to date somewhat quickly after we got divorced. And I just, it takes everything that you feel you are as a man. And the funny thing is, Danny, you know this and I know this, nobody else gives a shit. Like, nobody's paying attention. We think they're thinking, but they're not there. But we feel that way. And so like, you literally look at a stranger on the street, you're like, that guy knows I'm a failure too, even though they have it. And because of our mindset with that. And there's not enough men talking about, because it's hard on a woman too. Like, it is hard. Divorce to me, it's one of the hardest. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, worst enemy, and especially when you have kids. But it is something that I hope more people talk about. On this show, we've talked about, on the ThriveMore show, I've talked to so many guests where it starts off with something, and then we quickly get into kind of this trauma that we've, and it's different levels. Some have a capital T, some is a lowercase t trauma that people have, but it's still trauma to them. And two things come out of that: either destructive behavior or growth. You kind of go one way or the other. And for me, usually it's destructive behavior followed by growth. That's kind of my pattern. That's kind of my pattern.
I'm going to crash it. I'm going to run it into the wall. There's no doubt about that. I'm going to regret it afterwards, but I'm going to crash it. The counselor he's like, you essentially threw an adult temper tantrum.
Yeah.
But people don't get it. One of the things that I tried to explain to folks was that you do it because in one way, you talk about that emasculation is like, you're like, well, somebody wants me.
Yeah.
Right. But then at the same time, you're also in your head like, well, if it wasn't me, it would be somebody else. Like, I'm not special. You know what I'm saying? I just happen to be here. Maybe I fit, it's one of the things my counselor said. He goes, you ride motorcycles, you own a business, you're a trainer, you got tattoos, you fit a mold for some of these people, right? And so you're sitting in that thing, and it ends up making you feel worse afterwards.
Yep.
And so you have to, I think, I wish it wasn't the case. I think some people are like me, like you've got to get burned before you go, oh, that's hot. Like, a really smart person can look at it and go, that's going to burn you, but not me. I'm dense. I've got to touch it. I got to touch it to see for sure. Maybe it's not really hot. Maybe it's just like lukewarm, And so that's how it all plays out. But, the other thing that I look at when I talk to guys about this is that, the second phase of that is if you do have kids, and now there's another man in the picture.
Mm-hmm.
And now there is, there's just one of the things that's difficult. I mean, like, literally we're doing it now. I'm selling my house to try to move 5 minutes from my ex because it's better for the kids.
Yep.
Right. It comes in there. Like, where's the stability side of it? One thing that somebody told me, actually a mutual friend of ours, Mike Arcee, said this. And I thought it was such a beautiful way of putting it. And it really helped me navigate this. And he said, your kids are your favorite people, and their mother is always going to be their favorite person. So how do you want to treat your favorite person's favorite person?
Yeah.
Right. And then for me, that clicked for me. You know what I'm saying? Like another guy who I follow a lot, I'm part of the training program under, is Garrett J. White.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that he says, and so many people are wrapped up in this, is you're more concerned with being right than getting what you want.
Yeah.
And, you know, I can point out who did this and who hurt who and who was wrong, and you're this and that. And the only thing it does is make me feel vindicated for voicing how I felt. But at the truth, at the end of it, it keeps you way away from what you actually want.
Yep.
Which, you know, I told my ex-wife, I said, listen, and we're good. We co-parent together great and stuff along those lines. I said, listen, if our kids get to the day that they're married and they're worried about where they set mom and dad, we have failed.
Oof.
We have failed. And I refuse to fail.
Yeah.
If it's, you know, the things that I went through as a kid, I may get a lot of shit wrong, but I will not get that wrong.
Yeah.
I will not get that wrong.
I love that. If they have to, I love that, Danny. I'm going to share one quick story. Like my epiphany is, and then I want you to share with the audience about Soldierfit and how you got into that. And then I want to talk about your foundation, your nonprofit. I strived to be the better person and all that, whatever that means. But I would fail at times. And then I would say things like, you know, well, if you're a mom, blah, blah, blah. And I remember I was tucking my daughter in and I said something like that. And she started bawling. And she looked at me and she said, I don't know, she would have been 11. And she said, I thought grownups got divorced so they wouldn't fight anymore.
You just crumble. Dude, crumble.
I can tell you this. I haven't said a cross word since, and I won't. I mean, you know, and I just, that was a message from God of like, okay, if you're not going to learn your own way, let me just send a message right through your daughter, you know, and I'll never forget it. I will never forget it for the rest of my life. You know, it hit me like a lightning bolt. Yeah.
You know, I have a stepson. He's not my son, but, you know, I have a stepson. So I always tell people, you know, when I don't want to say I don't have a son, and then that sounds rude, but you get what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know what boys do to dads, but bruh, daughters,
forget it.
Bro, if you want to, you know, and it's actually kind of crappy because I have to be the disciplinarian.
Sure.
That's the wild side of all of it, right? Like, I do very much believe that a father's love is different than a mother's love. Agreed. I 100% believe that. I think we have a different role. I don't care what this new society says. We have a different role. We should be. I believe dads are the standard bearers. I believe that in my heart of hearts. Like, and if I'm having a relationship with other males, like, we're going to hold you to standard. We're going to hold you to task. That's like our job, right? Mm-hmm. Like, here is the line. You're going to be here minimum. And so it is such a weird dichotomy to just love them little sons of bitches to death. But then I've got to be the disciplinarian, you know, like, you're acting up at your mom's house. I got to call dad, you know, it's like, I got to bring the boom in the voice, but it is, they can say some shit to you and you just be like, you know why you know, it's funny. It is hilarious how they wrap you around their finger though.
Yep. I showed everybody, like, the millisecond you become a parent, you are forever vulnerable. You are forever vulnerable. It's a different vulnerability that you've never felt until that child is born, man.
And I can't listen to Sarah McLachlan on the whenever they like do the St. Jude's Melody. I just hang on, buddy. I don't even need to eat. Like, just take it. Because you know, my daughter had her tonsils out this last weekend, and I'm sitting down there, and dude, it's hard not to, it's funny, like, it's hard because it's hard not to get emotional because she set up and, you know, she's completely out of it. She's just loopy. It's like, and I'm like, Right? It's tonsils, bro. It's tonsils. They give her a popsicle. They're giving her a popsicle. It's okay, you know. But you're sitting down there in that moment, and you're like, "Oh my god, my god!" You know, I know this is rambling, but I have to share this because it was just there's this show. It's like one of those tuna shows. You know, I forget which one it was, but it actually made me mad because the douchebag was a veteran. And whenever a veteran is a douchebag, like I just feel like it reflects on all of us. And he's on this boat and he's just a complete ass. He's an ass to his crew. He's just an ass to the thing. And then there's this other boat that when you look at it, they're all in matching uniforms. It's they're fishing differently. They have top-notch equipment. All, you know, you can tell money's been spent on the boat. Yeah. Right. And the veteran's riding this old rinky dinky deal. And so they're talking to the guy and he's just talking mad trash about this fancy crew. They're this, they get everything they wanted. Must have had a silver spoon put in their mouth. And they don't say anything for the other crew for probably 2-3 episodes. And then they interview him. And his daughter died of cancer. And he said the only reason he's out here on that boat is because the pace is so intense that it doesn't give him the ability to think about his daughter.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here thinking, watching, this dude's looking in, he sees the glitz, right? He sees the airplane. But what's truthful, was a possibility of truth, is that guy's marriage is falling apart. Yeah. Because they lost their child. He's probably losing everything, is probably spiraling himself. And just because you saw that facade, you think his life's easier. And you can bet your bottom dollar that if that dude had the ability to give you his boat, his crew, every nice thing he possessed, and get his daughter back and be in your rinky-dink little ass boat, he would do it today.
Millisecond. Yep.
You know, and so that's the side of the house. Like when you look at any of that stuff, man, it can always be worse.
Yep. And usually is. And usually is.
This segment is sponsored by Beamlight Sauna Franchising. Are you looking to take control of your destiny and own your own business? Do you want a great brand in a rapidly growing market? Well, Beamlight Sauna is a nationwide health and wellness franchise with amazing opportunities in select markets. You can bring the power of infrared sauna and red light therapy to your community while you build a thriving business. Beamlight Sauna offers support that includes site selection, build out, even pre-launch programs and turnkey marketing so you can open your studio with a large recurring revenue member base. To learn more about business ownership and franchise opportunities in the fast-growing health and wellness space, go to beamlightsauna.com. That's BEEM lightsauna.com and click on franchise opportunities to learn more.
All right, so let's fast forward. You return from your deployment, and then at some point in the Chicagoland, you end up in this business opportunity of Soldierfit. How did that come to be?
I got fired.
Such as every entrepreneur story. Yeah.
No, I got out of the military and I joined. First job I got outside the military was selling memberships at a local gym chain. It was called Fitness First back in the day. They ended up having like 30 units. They ended up selling to Golds. Mm-hmm. Hell, probably 15, 16 years ago, maybe at this point in time. And the sales training was abysmal. The sales training was write the first number really big and then write the second number really small and then present it. Okay. Right. And I had a very, very negative connotation with money back then. And so ended up getting fired on Christmas Eve and had to pack. I've had my ego shattered a lot in life. That was one of those times where, I'd went from leading men in combat to packing my box with all my stuff from the military and getting fired. And then after I got fired, I got evicted. And after I got evicted, I wound up homeless, got my car repossessed and, fell out really, really bad. And I went through I've had been divorced twice, unfortunately. The first divorce I don't count because I was young. It was stupid, right? I always tell people, like, if you're looking at the woman walking down to you, or if you're walking down to the man and you're thinking to yourself, if this doesn't work out, it won't be a big deal. It's not going to work out. It's going to be a really big deal. Just so you know, right then, like, go ahead and do the embarrassment of running away from the altar, go Julia Roberts, and it'll be okay. But, the fact is, though, kind of like you said, even though that marriage, like, I'm not even remotely surprised that it didn't work. I mean, it took us longer to divorce than we were together. Yeah. But still, I was like, I'm a failure. It's just another level of failure. And, I'd had suicidal ideation my entire life. My brother committed suicide. And I went out one night drinking. I'm not much of a drinker. I still don't drink much. Like, I can't tell you the last time I was drunk, but, I went out, and this is before I knew anybody. And this was before I really understood. Social media has only made it worse, but before I really understood that everybody's wearing masks, everybody's that fisherman.
Yep.
Right. They got their shit. And so I went to the bar one night, and, I looked around. Everybody seemed happy. Everybody seemed like they had it together. I wasn't where I thought I should be in life. And I went home. I was like, man, I got to get out of here. And I went back home and continued to drink, and I wanted to go to sleep, and I was taking pain pills for my back. And so, in a perfect storm of depression and depressants, I wrote my suicide note and made a jump for it. And woke up the next day strapped to a hospital bed, and then ended up getting put into the psych ward. And it was when I heard the door lock behind the orderly that I was like, man, I can spend the rest of my life locked up in here. Yeah. And that's when we made a decision, we got to turn around. For me, I turned to fitness and martial arts. Yeah. And so I started training martial arts at this one gym, and ended up taking a fight. And as happens in the amateur level all the time, like, fighters switch out. My fighter got switched out. The guy that ended up fighting lied about his record, said he had no fights. He had 8, came in 10 pounds overweight, and ends up being the head coach for the other team. And they didn't want me to fight him. And I told Master Mike, I said, listen, we knew there was a chance I could get my ass whooped. I can't promise you I'll win, but I promise I won't embarrass you. Let me fight. And I went out there and proceeded to get my ass whooped from one end of the cage to the next. And for some reason, it crept into my head. Guy hit me in an arm triangle choke. It was literally going gray. And for some reason, it popped in my head. You promised him you wouldn't embarrass him. And I managed to get out of the hole. I cracked the guy, took his back, and choked him out with a few seconds left in the round. And Master Mike comes up to me afterwards. I tell people, you're interviewing every day. You just don't know it. Yeah. And that fight was an interview for me. And Master Mike said, you won't quit. Would you like to bring your program into my gym? And he opened the doors to me, and we blew up. And so I always tell people, you don't know when you're interviewing, right? And you don't know what opportunity is sitting there looking you in the eye to see how you react during times of stress. And then 2, just because you've been screwed over time and time again doesn't mean you should stop helping. Because I watched Master Mike. I watched it happen before me. I watched it happen after me. Very, very generous man. And I've watched people abuse that generosity over and over again. But he keeps doing it. And because of that, there have been literally thousands of people between his company and mine that have improved their lives because he didn't give up on being kind.
Yeah. Yeah. So for the listeners who aren't familiar with Soldierfit, just kind of talk about the concept and how it is different and the way you structure that program altogether.
Yeah. So, one of the things that we do is we do tie in a lot of the military stuff. So when you come in, it is a Humvee front desk. We've got paratroopers hanging from the ceiling. You get issued a shirt to wear to class. You also get special milestone shirts like your 50th, 150th, 300th. You get a recruiter shirt when you refer somebody in. And so we have all of these things where people fall in, just like you do in the military. Mm-hmm. We're like friendly drill sergeants. We're not going to yell at you. A lot of people think that, it's name's a blessing and a curse. People think that we're going to yell at you, and we really don't. Our goal here our mission is to help you accomplish yours. And our goal here is to keep 50% of this country from becoming obese by 2030, because a lot of folks don't realize it, but it's a national security risk. It's literally listed as a national security risk because our young men and women can't pass the physical fitness test to go into the armed services. And so we want to make sure that we're doing our part to keep, because we believe that in three things: fitness, freedom, and family. Well, a fit America is an America that can defend itself. It's a free America. And so all of that stuff ties in hand in hand.
Yeah.
People ask all the time, is Soldierfit the best workout you can do? No. Best workout you can do is the one you will do.
Yeah.
If you told me that I can come swim in your pool for $1 a month as much as I want, thank you. It's a great deal. I don't like swimming. I ain't coming.
Yeah.
Right. And so I've never thought that any of us are competitors. And it's one of the things that I've always liked about being part of the group that we're part of is that we're going to help each other out. Like, I can't service everybody. You can't service everybody, And so it's like the country needs it. Why don't we work together, share best practices, and everybody win?
Platoon 22. I know you as a professional and as a fitness entrepreneur, but I didn't know anything about this. So I'd love for you to share a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so Platoon 22 was a nonprofit that I started not too long after we started Soldierfit. Ended up building that up to, we opened the Platoon Veteran Services Center 2 years ago. Was part of the capital campaign that worked with Goodwill to raise $3 million to open it. So it's the first ever Veteran Services Center here in Frederick, Maryland. And the primary mission there is to help our warfighters transition from actually being in the military to being the civilian side. And there's a big transition that happens there that veterans aren't prepared for. It doesn't matter whether you did 4 years or whether you did 20. Oftentimes the guys that you serve with that hated the military, didn't want to be part of it. They're the main sons of bitches wearing Marine Corps, Army shirts, in their 40s and 50s. Because it's just like, in so many ways, especially if you do 4 and get out, like if you're one of those people. I did 8 and got out. But if you do that 4 pump and jump, like what a lot of people don't grasp is that your brain is literally still developing up to like 23, 25 years old. I forget which is the hard stop.
Yeah.
So we have all of these people going in the military at pivotal years, like their brain is still developing, and they don't understand the totality of that machine until they get out.
Yeah.
A lot of folks go, I went in the military to grow up. Well, that was stupid, because the military is the ultimate parent. I'm going to tell you what to wear, when to eat, when to sleep, where you're going to go, how long you're going to be there, when you're going to come back. Like, you don't get any autonomy unless you at least make it to an NCO level rank.
Yeah.
And so, I would get in trouble for privates that bounced their checks. Like, dog, I wasn't with him on Friday night at 8 p.m. Well, how is that you know what I'm saying? But that's the level of control that comes out of it. And you don't get it when you're young and your mind's not wrapped around it. And all you're thinking is constraint. It's very much like being a teenager. In some cases, you're still a teenager. And all you think is, when I get out of my mom and dad's house, I'm going to do what the hell I want. But you don't realize until all of a sudden, you used to go back and forth between these gates with no problem. And then all of a sudden, one day, 4 years later, you're no longer allowed back inside the gate. And you're not like, if you're looking at an employee, an entrepreneur is probably the closest thing to this, because you're an entrepreneur. But as an employee, like I'm an employee at 9 to 5, and then I'm off. Well, the soldier is 24/7. Like, you're never off. You never leave it. And then all of a sudden, you're cut off and everybody's gone. And now you don't have a clear-cut mission. And, well, what is my purpose? And hold up, all these other people, hold on, this is supposed to be done, but they're not doing it. It's fine. They're leaving. Why are they leaving? We're not done. And so it's such a culture shock for so many of them that, it doesn't hit you until about month 3 when you're out. When you've partied all you can party, and that shit has a shelf life. And all of a sudden you're like, what are you doing? I saw this, I don't even know what movie it's from, but I thought it was so good. He goes, do you want to be happy or do you want to have purpose? And the guy's like, well, I can't have both. So you can't have both. Because if you're happy, the only thing you're thinking about is being happy and what's the next fun thing. But if you have purpose, you're thinking about all the stuff that happened before and everything that you have to do in the future, and you're going to obsess about both. And so do you want to be happy or do you want to have purpose? And so a lot of these guys get out and happy didn't cut it. And now I don't have any purpose. And now this is where they derail and get in trouble.
Wow. Well, that's awesome that you've done that. Just awesome. Because you're right. If you go from 24/7, this is what I do. I'm told what to do, where to go, what to do, what to be, all that. And then you're just unleashed. That's a rough gig, man. That's a rough transition. Hard, like you said, hard cut.
There's no way to do it for you. But imagine if I just told you at 5 o'clock, stop caring about Rockbox. Like, what?
Yeah.
Like,
it's impossible. Yeah, you can't.
Yeah, what? It's a shock.
Yeah.
It's a shock.
Yeah. Yeah. I hadn't thought about it that way, though, with military. All right. So I'm really interested. What is there a book? Because my listeners know I'm an avid reader. I just devour business books and self-help and biographies and stuff. Is there a book that was part of your youth or even part, maybe in the last year, anything? It doesn't matter when, but do you remember reading it, Danny, and you set it down when you were done and said, whoa, that I will never think about this subject the same way, or this has impacted me in a way that I'm going to take with me for the rest of my life. Is there a book?
There's 2 books I would always recommend. The first book is How to Win Friends and Influence People. Fundamentally changed my perception of how do we talk to people and how do we get there. And the book I took the most notes in, I mean, I probably have in my thing probably 180 notes out of that book, The Happiness Advantage.
You're the second person that's told me about that book. Yeah. I think I was in college when I read How to Win Friends and Influence People, and I've read it. The cover has fallen off. I read it so many times. Absolutely, that book you can go back to every 3 years or so, and you'll still pull new stuff from it. Yeah. All right, couple of last questions, and man, I'm anxious to hear your answer. If we were to fast forward to the end of your life, your beautiful, rich life, very full life, but we do get to the end. We know how we all know how this movie ends. For all of us at some point, and we're there. And you're looking down from above, and there's a loved one reading your eulogy, but they're only allowed 3 words, like 3 descriptors to describe you and the impact you had on them and all your loved ones and your family and your clients and everybody. And it was the 3 words that you lived your life by. What do you hope they say when they choose those 3 words?
I mean, if I only have to put 3 words, it would be father, brother, friend. Right?
Love it.
If they could get 4, I'd throw great in front of all of it. But great father, brother, friend.
I love it. It's awesome. That's awesome. And I think you're on the path there, man. I think you're on the path. And then lastly, if you had, second to last, because I want to let people know how they can follow you, but if you had a magic wand and tonight, you can wave that magic wand, Danny, and you can make one change to the world, just how the world runs and operates or people think or whatever it is. But you can make one major change to the world by waving this wand. You wave that tonight. We wake up in the morning. How is the world different according to Danny?
I would make it so that every single young man and woman on this planet had to do a year of manual labor.
And why so?
Because if everybody, I grew up on a farm, it's one of the things that sometimes, I'll get frustrated with people, whether it's entrepreneurs or people that, have jobs and they're complaining about hard work. And I'm like, bro, you got to text somebody from your couch in your PJs in a climate controlled room, sipping on your smoothie from DoorDash. You have no concept of hard work. You have none. And, we bastardize the trades in this country so bad. And it's part of the reason why we run into problems is because everybody went to go get a liberal arts degree that they can do absolutely jack and shit with. Right.
Yep.
But they think they're better than that plumber, that farmer, that the logger. But if you went out and I don't even give you a whole year. I just need you a summer of picking up square hay bales and throwing them on the back of a tractor. right? If everybody in this country did that for 6 months to a year, we would ship right up, because you can't do stuff like that and not realize how blessed you are. For us to be able to make a living doing this type of stuff simply just by sharing information and helping people, like, bruh, you may have a full day, but it ain't hard work, right? It ain't hard work. And so that would be, I think we would fix 90% of this country's problems if everybody broke a little sweat once in a while.
Love it. That is one of the most unique answers I've ever heard of that question. I've asked that question to 85 different guests. I love it. All right. Most important question. I know after people listen to this, they're going to want to know, all right, how can I follow him? I just want to see how this story ends, where it goes. How would people connect with you, follow you, be part of your journey?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook under Danny Farrar. You can find us on Instagram at Danny Farrar the Herd. And then obviously soldierfit.com is an easy place to pick us up.
Awesome. We'll put all those in the show notes too, so they can just scroll right down and click on it. Brother, this is better. I knew it was going to be good, but this was even better than I thought, man. Thank you so much for taking time out. Oh my gosh. I'm sure I will see you soon at the next conference. And thanks again, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it very much. Salute. Thank you for tuning in to the ThriveMore podcast. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any of the resources that we mentioned during the podcast. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and the greatest. You can connect with me on any of the socials at Real Roger Martin. And be sure to check out our website, ThriveMoreBrands.com. There you'll find information on the brands we support and information on franchising. Thanks again for tuning in.